In order to evaluate how our group's project's opening title sequence abides by or challenges the codes and conventions, I felt it was important to evaluate it against other similar media products. Thus, I decided to compare it against films that are relevant to our particular genre. I felt it would be more beneficial to analyse these films in regards to certain aspects that may shape and challenge them regarding to the codes and conventions of the genre, such as the themes, the plot lines, and the titling. Throughout our project, there are many themes that appear to conform to the traditional codes and conventions of the science fiction genre. However, they do so in a way that is atypical to the genre, and thus seem to challenge many of these conventions. For example, one of the most notable conventions of the science fiction genre is the use of a dystopian, futuristic city that serves as a primary antagonist throughout the film. Although we do include a vision of a dystopian city, it merely serves as a secondary antagonist against the greater threat of an alien invasion, a plotline that serves to place our film firmly in the alien invasion subgenre. The majority of films that identify themselves as sci-fi films do not employ other themes and subsets to the genre throughout their film, often because they feel it would make the plot and themes seem convoluted. However, we as a group decided to challenge this sense of normality within the genre and decided that our project would combine both the alien invasion subgenre along with the survival thriller theme. From the outset, we decided that our project would be something that was unconventional. Science fiction contains many specific subgenres, themselves becoming part of the conventions of the overall genre. Although our film is strictly speaking part of the alien invasion subgenre, the aim of our project was to detach ourselves from the traditional alien story fare. After this decision was made, I researched an opening to a film that had similar elements, that also challenges the traditional conventions of the sci-fi genre, Dark City. In the opening of this film, it also concocts a dark and sinister and foreboding vibe to the scene, as we are spoken to by a mysterious narrator in a dark, noir-esque street, making the viewer first believe that it may be a thriller or a mystery, but showcases its other theme later in the opening as the narrator explains the nature of the city, that it is controlled by aliens. It is rare for films of this nature to challenge the traditional conventions commonly set in place by the stereotypical Hollywood blockbusters that generally do not offer more than one theme following the genre that is obviously portrayed in the opening sequence. However, in the opening sequence of our project, we combine two genres, science fiction and survival thriller, and ensured that these two genres transitioned seamlessly with one another, as we felt the changing atmosphere was beneficial to keeping the audience entertained, and felt it made our opening sequence stand out amongst others. During the film's planning stages, we decided that the film's narrative should be driven by heavy symbolic elements, a theme that was not commonly supported by the science fiction genre. Almost every element of our story was implemented with some form of symbolism in mind, including the title of the film itself, Thanatos, as this is one of the main themes of our movie. This is seemingly confirmed due to the lack of any form of symbolism in the films that any of our group researched. In certain aspects, however, our film does abide by the conventional norms of the genre. An example of this would be the music that was used throughout our opening. Survival thrillers often employ a dark and foreboding score throughout their films in order to create suspense, and ours is no different. Accompanying this is our more traditional use of camera shots throughout. We use three shots commonly throughout the opening that are staples of the genre. These are long shots, used to showcase our setting, close-ups, which we use to build suspense and show a reaction, and tracking shots that we used when we were following our protagonist. All of these shots are commonly employed in both sci-fi and thriller genres, and so our film seemingly conforms to this code through using them. As our plotline takes place partly in a class-obsessed city, it is natural for our film to portray strong connotations of the polarizing ends of the wealth spectrum. This is represented by the two teenage protagonists of the opening scene. The first protagonist we see, played by Keira Marshall, is portrayed as the wealthier of the duo, having grown up in a wealthy part of the city. Many would associate inherited wealth with naivety. However, in the first scene we see her in, she is seen questioning the information that has been fed to her. This scene helped to initially portray her, and thus those in the same class as her, as intuitive, dispelling the connotations of naivety. However, later in the opening, as she is seen verbally rebuked by Derek's character. We see her simply accepting what she is being told without ever second guessing it, showcasing how she accepts the words of others as truth, a quality generally associated with naivety. This helps to symbolize the naivety and corruptibility of the wealth within the city, and immediately sets out the tone for the representation of its group. This all occurs whilst we see our main protagonist, played by Anna, escaping the confines of the oppressive city. Anna's character represents the lower class in the city, and so from natural experience living on the streets and such, she is more attuned to the lies and deceit that is propagated throughout. When we first see her, she is packing her bags to leave her home, which presumably she lives alone in. This serves to highlight how she and others of her class have been seemingly left to fend for themselves in the city, and the social class in general is portrayed to the audience as more sympathetic as a result of this. Thereafter, we view Anna's character attempting to escape the city, as she seemingly crosses vast distances and dangers to do so. This again serves to highlight her resolve, and to showcase the lower class as the braver class of the city, and this feeling is furthered as we realise that she is doing so to find her sister. The lower class especially has always been strongly linked to family ties, and this is showcased throughout the film. The opening overall presents the rich and gullible as corrupt, while showing the poor as brave and independent, even though they must overcome great difficulties. Our protagonists are also both young females, whereas Derek's character, who seems to be the antagonist of the opening, is suggested to be male. Throughout the scene we see how this male character corrupts the minds of one of our protagonists through the use of passive-aggressive imagery, and as he is assumed to be a supporter of the city, we see how he has caused our main protagonist to leave. This setup is used to portray men as evil, as they have been corrupted with power, and would see that those who challenge them be banished or silenced. This is particularly striking, as some of the audience may relate to this, due to men traditionally holding higher wages and more seats of power in the real world. In contrast to this, the female group is portrayed as the brave heroes of the piece, as the protagonist attempts to escape the challenges imposed on her, presumably by men. This is a theme that many of the female characters in the audience may be able to relate to, due to the challenges that women face in the real world, and the representation of women is therefore more striking because of this. Science fiction is a genre that is traditionally paired with major production companies and requires a big budget. Major companies often jump at the chance to produce these movies, however, as they often make a great deal of profit on their initial investment. Due to the accessibility of the genre, and therefore unrestricted market potential, I believe that our project would also be produced and distributed by a major worldwide film production company, such as 20th Century Fox or Paramount Pictures. There are a number of reasons that contribute to this belief, but also some that polarize the opinion. The first of these reasons is due to the genres of our film. Science fiction and thriller are seemingly two of the most popular genres to the audience, as shown by our research, in which the audience interest in the genre peaked at science fiction. The two genres combined could create an even more interesting viewpoint for audiences, and so it is likely that it will garner the attention of a large production company. The next reason is down to the fact that we have cast two teenage actresses in leading roles. Coming off the back of movies such as Twilight and The Hunger Games, the appetite for movies with a teenage central character seems to be in high demand. This, combined with its unusual plot, is likely to get the attention of the teenage and young adult audiences around the globe. The final reason I believe it would garner big studio attention is due to the unusualness of the plot and themes. The film market is currently saturated with remakes and unoriginal movies, particularly in the sci-fi genre. A film like ours, with an original plot and an exciting, different theme, is likely to attract an audience of those who are tired of the ordinary film fare and want something new. These factors would all help contribute to the film getting produced by a major studio company due to the large audience potential. However, there are some reasons as to why this may not be the case. The most viable of these reasons would be the fact that the plot is too complicated for many in the more casual audience bracket. The heavy symbolism used throughout and the intricate nature of its plotlines could alienate a large number of viewers. When developing our project, we never really tried to target our film at a specific gender. However, due to the fact that our main protagonist is a girl, we think this aspect would result in it appealing more to girls than boys, as a female audience may feel as though the protagonist is a relatable character due to the fact they share genders. Thus, the audience may be more drawn to our character and film, as the audience may be able to empathise with her, perhaps if they too have had their own experience of running away from home at a young age. Due to the research into the ideal audience for our film, I believe that our film will mainly attract an audience between the ages of 15 to 25. This is due to the genre of our opening, thriller/sci-fi. These genres prove immensely popular with people in this age group according to our research, as they are two of the most popular genres in our questionnaire. The two genres, however, do appeal to a much wider audience of moviegoers, dedicated and casual alike. Thus, it is likely that the film will attract many from outside this age bracket. Due to our group's research, we came to the conclusion that audiences who enjoy one particular genre tend to enjoy films of the same genre even if they are outside the age or gender bracket of the projected target audience. This was evident during the construction of our project, as even though we were targeting a specific demographic of the population, we found that the themes in the movie branch out to a much wider range of audiences. This is most likely because of the thriller and sci-fi genres being two of the most popular and adaptable genres in the film industry. Throughout our filming, we tried to address the interests and fulfill the criteria set by our target audience for what they find appealing in the genre in order to attract them to our film. As we concluded that our target audience would be comprised of mainly dedicated sci-fi fans, we didn't feel the need to take any artistic or creative cutbacks in order to achieve this goal. It was evident from our questionnaires that science fiction and thriller were two of the most popular genres amongst audiences. In order to ensure that fans of both genres were pleased with the film, we combined elements of both genres into our opening. For example, in the opening, we combined the score mainly used in thriller movies in order to amplify the suspense, along with the visual imagery that often accompanies science fiction films. This increased the originality of the plot, which seemingly correlates with the audience attraction in the product, and presumably helped please fans of the separate genres, and perhaps even allowed them to appreciate the qualities of the other. Our movie also helps meet the expectations of those dedicated to the genre by creating a unique and uncompromising take on the science fiction genre in a market saturated with remakes and B-movies. As a group, we felt that we had met the expectations of our target audience, and thus our film would be successful in attracting them. However, we recognised that our opinion and assessment of the matter could be attributed to bias. In order to overcome this problem, we decided to ask members of our target audience their opinions of the film after reviewing. Almost all of these reports gave positive feedbacks on the project and said that the opening would definitely attract them to see the final film. Throughout the construction of our film, we used a large number of technologies in the research, planning and shooting stages. We grew more accustomed to these technologies through practice using them in the preliminary coursework and during the creation of our film, and gained a greater knowledge of the technologies we were using. This has helped to show us how essential technology is in the creation of a successful media project, as some form of technology was used at each stage of the development process. These forms can be designated as websites, software, or equipment. The equipment we used throughout the filming process was vital for us to get our desired results from the film. Though there were a number of different pieces in the equipment, the video camera was most essential to our work. Without the camera, we would not have been able to record the shots, and so it was vital that the members of our group knew how to use it effectively. When we were filming our preliminary, we got our first hands-on experience working with the camera. During this process, we learned the basic function of it, such as how to record video footage and upload it. Over the course of the two projects, each member of our group became proficient with it, combining it with other parts of equipment such as the tripod in order to get our desired shots. Although the tripod was always available to us, we decided to make a lot of our shots handheld in order to capture the theme of the scenes and also get a better perspective of the character. We used a number of online websites when planning and researching for our project. These websites helped us immensely as they made it much easier to gather information about our research movies and enabled us to make a more in-depth and helpful planning decision. Software became most prevalent during the editing phase of production as we used the software Final Cut Pro in order to edit the footage we had recorded. This proved to be a vital instrument in attaining our desired scenes. Initially, our group was unskilled in the software, but throughout the preliminary project, we grew more accustomed to the functions, and this aided us immensely. When we began our work on the preliminary task, our group had no previous experience of shooting a film. This led to some problems within some aspects of that process, but through practice and experimentation, we learned how to overcome these obstacles when filming our final piece. I have chosen to evaluate these aspects in accordance to 6 categories: teamwork, time management, camera work, music and sound effects, location choices, and editing techniques. Teamwork. When filming our preliminary task, none of our group had ever worked with one another, and so we were unsure as to the abilities that each member of the group had. This led to some tension throughout the filming of our preliminary, as some of the creative choices were disputed, and the film itself may have suffered as a result. See, at the beginning of the year, when we first began our project, the members of our group hadn't learned to come to a compromise with one another, itself a key element in the film shooting process. This resulted in bickering and debating longer than necessary, and the film's shooting time was drawn out as a result. However, throughout our time working on our final piece, we all noticed the dramatic change in our attitudes towards one another and the film itself, both in terms of maturity and professionalism, as we learnt the art of compromising, allowing us to use one person's ideas combined with another to create something original. This in turn helped us decide what we decided we would actually film in a much shorter time than on the preliminary task, allowing us to use a greater amount of time to perfect our filming and editing. We also learned how to accommodate each group member's abilities, helping us attribute different teamwork tasks, allowing us to specialise, and at times contributing essential feedback on one another's work. Time management. When reviewing our preliminary task, it became apparent that time management was not a priority for us. We never wrote any form of plan of action or timetable, and we never set a completion deadline for each stage. However, during construction of Thanatos, time management was an important element, as we ensured we set deadlines to meet, helping us to be more efficient in our work. This was achieved through the making of our shooting timetable, detailing when we were going to film, as well as meeting in our own spare time to ensure that the editing stage was completed, and keeping in contact with one another via various social networks. Camera work. Although proficient, the camera work used in the making of our preliminary task lacked any form of visual flair or distinct style. The shots themselves were not poor per se, however, with more practice and ingenuity, they could have been improved greatly. We addressed this problem throughout the filming of our project by experimenting with more diverse camera angles and shots. We also ensured that the continuity was of a greater standard in our final project, as in the preliminary task it was something of an afterthought. However, in the main task we ensured that every shot was correctly continuing the previous one. Music and sound effects. The music and sound effects were one of the stronger points in our preliminary task, as we took care and effort in creating a score that balanced the theme of the film in order to create the desired atmosphere. We acted upon this, however, in the filming of our final project and implemented GarageBand software in order to create the perfect soundtrack for our opening. We also improved upon our editing technique using Final Cut Pro in order to implement the voiceover heard in the scene, experimenting with sound effects and tuning in order to make the voice suit that of the character and making the scene seem more professional. Location choices. During the filming of our preliminary, our shooting locations were restricted to a single house and thus limited our resources in regards to camera shots, lighting and production design. However, during the filming of our final project, we expanded the amount of shooting locations available to us, and thus were able to experiment more with camera shots and lighting techniques in order to get our desired shots. Editing techniques. During the editing of our preliminary task, our group was only beginning to use the software Final Cut Pro, and so we were not used to its functions or options. This limited our ability with the software, and thus we were restricted in our editing of the film. However, through our practice with the preliminary piece, we grew more accustomed to the software, and thus were able to expand on our knowledge of the functions that we could implement. This led to the implementation of effects, filters, and transitions in the final product that made it seem professionally made.